Year after year we're in Barcelona. Year after year we cut the winter short and enjoy the awesome roads around Catalonia's capital. And year after year what used to be the highlights of the year slowly becomes part of everyday life. But every now and then you have to step away from the familiar, leave your comfort zone and challenge yourself. After all, the world, and Catalonia too, has so much exciting stuff to offer. So it's time for an adventure. Good morning and hello everyone. We didn't quite manage to catch the sunrise. There were a few turbulences with this whole story. Originally it was supposed to be called 3 countries, 5 passes, 1 day. Because I've never been to France and I've never been to Andorra. And since I enjoy exploring a new country and both of them are quite easy to reach from Barcelona, it sounded perfect, like the perfect tour. Head a bit further north, get a taste of that Pyrenees air, cross into Andorra, tick off a few mountain passes that are supposedly already open in March when the weather is good, which luckily it is this time, unlike last year. Last year there was a tour with Garraf and the Multistrada, 2 Multistradas, V2 and V4. And back then we also headed north towards the Pyrenees. That whole thing happened under slightly harsher conditions. It was quite an adventure, including a snowstorm at almost 2,000 meters up there. That's not something we want to repeat today, but we do want to repeat the direction. Patrick, who's holding the camera right now, is joining us on this tour, but he's driving a car. And yesterday evening we actually realized, unbelievably, that according to the rental terms, our rental car isn't allowed to leave the country. So no France and no Andorra after all. Instead, in a bit of a pinch, and think of it what you will, I asked AI what other highlights Catalonia has to offer. And it came up with some really exciting suggestions. So I think we don't need to change the plan completely. We'll just enjoy the atmosphere of Barcelona, waking up for a moment longer, and then head north again to get a bit of that Pyrenees feeling. Off we go into the adventure. The start of our adventure is something we know well, but it's still an incredibly beautiful spot. The Parc del Garraf. Narrow roads wind their way through this limestone massif just southwest of the metropolis, offering stunning views of the coast, the sea and rugged rock faces that, typical for a karst landscape, are riddled with shafts and caves. That made the area interesting, not just for us and for climbers, but starting in the 16th century also for pirates and smugglers. Today though, it's just the first corners that are being taken, and that in a very down-to-earth way. Garraf, always beautiful. I think over the last 3 weeks I've been up here at least every other day, but it never gets old. And today it's actually a nice contrast program, because over the past days and weeks I've been riding these ridiculously extreme, highly technical, almost over-engineered bikes up here, like the BMW R1300 RS and BMW R1300 RT, and most recently the KTM 1390 Super Adventure R. All absolute monster machines. And the V-Strom 800 is just a really nice contrast to that. Maybe that's also one of the reasons why we chose the V-Strom 800 for today. For this one-day tour, I don't need 150 plus horsepower, I don't need radar, cruise control and all that. I just wanted to go for a relaxed ride. Back to the basics. Nothing special, or actually something special, because what do you really need for a day tour like this? An engine that's easy to handle but still fun at the same time, and that definitely applies to this excellent 800 twin. It's got really nice torque from low down. You can ride it through tight corners like here in the Garraf in a high gear, completely relaxed, barely needing to shift. At the same time, the engine is still dynamic enough for later on, once I've warmed up a bit and we maybe want to lean a bit more into the corners. And apart from that, upright seating position, good comfort, solid suspension, wind protection, those are the things that matter to me. And that's why I thought the Suzuki V-Strom, also reliable, you know, nothing's going to go wrong on this tour. Not that I'd want to call roadside assistance up in the high mountains anyway. So yeah, less is more. The way north out of the Parc del Garraf doesn't lead over asphalt, but along very relaxed gravel roads. The first hint of adventure kicks in, and even if I'm not on the more off-road focused DE version, the V-Strom 800 still handles the loose surface with confidence. But the biggest joy for me, as always, is that here, unlike back home, I can legally play around in the dirt. That kind of freedom deserves to be celebrated. And what better way than with a short break at what might just be the perfect spot for it. Quick snack break at Montserrat. Montserrat is that very distinctive, eye-catching massive behind me. You can see it from pretty much all across central Catalonia. We always used to call it the dragon's back because especially from the side it looks like there's a sleeping monster or dragon lying there with those jagged spikes along its spine. But you could also think of them as fingers, however you want to see it. It's just fascinating because it stands out so much. You can't help but wonder how formations like these rock towers, so delicate and lined up like that, could even occur naturally. So I looked into it. AI tells me that around 50 million years ago, a large river used to flow into an inland sea here. And because of the movement of the water and the pressure, pebbles and calcareous mud were basically compressed together like a kind of sediment concrete. Then at some point there was a tectonic shift that also pushed up the Pyrenees. And in the process, what used to be the riverbed and sea floor was lifted and pushed upward as well. Over millions of years, wind and weather, so wind and rain, gradually washed away the softer sediments between these harder sections. And what remained are these fingers or these jagged peaks. It really is an incredibly impressive landscape, Catalonia in general actually. If you take a look around, everywhere you see these cliffs and this rugged, broken terrain. Personally, I really love it. Now I'm going to enjoy my sandwich real quick, and then we'll head up there because there's something else interesting waiting for us. The Monastery of Montserrat, the spiritual center of Catalonia. Why? It is the home of the Black Madonna, the so-called La Moreneta. It's a statue of the Virgin Mary that, according to legend, was discovered by shepherd children in the year 880 AD in a cave, guided there by heavenly lights. Yeah, however it may have gotten here, over the centuries it has darkened from all the candle soot, which is why it's known as the Black Madonna. And today it's the patron saint of all Catalonia. But that's not the only reason why this place is considered the spiritual center of Catalonia. It has also been a refuge for the Catalan people and their culture over the centuries. That goes all the way back, for example, to the Napoleonic Wars, when the official armies of the Spanish king were quickly defeated by the French. But the Catalans made life hell for the French, fighting them every meter of the way. In retaliation, the French came up here in 1811 and burned this spiritual and cultural center to the ground. That's also why today the architecture feels relatively modern, because it was rebuilt during the 19th and 20th centuries. And even later, under Franco's dictatorship, when the Catalan language was banned, books were secretly printed here to keep the culture and the language alive. That's why people say today, you're not a true Catalan unless you've been to Montserrat at least once. And that's what makes this place so special, culturally, historically, surrounded by incredible landscapes, amazing roads, and apparently the inside is absolutely worth seeing as well. Unfortunately, we just don't have the time for that right now. Anyone who knows me or watches my travel videos regularly already knows, being a bit of a medieval nerd, there's no way I can just ride past an awesome castle like this. And especially not when that castle goes by the nickname the Unconquerable. Right next to the picturesque little town of Cardona lies the fortress of Cardona. And it has an incredibly interesting history, one that even involves us Austrians, well, sort of indirectly through a few different connections, because this fortress has been standing here since the 12th century, but it really gained importance during the War of the Spanish Succession. That was the war fought here after the Habsburg King Charles II, due to his inbred bloodline, was no longer able to have children and died without an heir, making him the last Habsburg on the Spanish throne. And then the French King Philip V basically said, all right, now it's mine. A war broke out between the Habsburgs and the Bourbons, which is what the French faction was called. And by that point, almost all of Catalonia had already been taken over or conquered by the French. Only Barcelona and Cardona were still holding out. But Barcelona was already under siege. So this place here basically became the headquarters of the Catalan resistance. Why did the Catalans even support us Austrians / the Habsburgs in the first place? They were afraid of French absolutism. Philip V was, after all, the grandson of the Sun King Louis XIV. And the Habsburgs had promised them, hey, your own culture, your language, your laws, you'll be able to keep all of that and continue practicing it under our rule. And so once again, the Catalans found themselves resisting and fighting back, holding out here for a really long time. Because militarily, this castle was never actually conquered. It was only after Barcelona fell on September 11, 1714, and it became clear, okay, that's it, the war is lost, that about a week later, the commander of the fortress of Cardona also raised the white flag, but it was never taken by force. Why? Because it was modernized in the 17th and 18th centuries. You can see it in these star-shaped bastions that extend far outward, well away from the main castle. This was already the age of cannons, and that meant you could fire at and destroy the enemy's artillery before it even got close enough to be in range of the main walls. On top of that, we're standing on a cone-shaped hill, way up high. Trying to storm this place is nearly impossible. With moats, multiple rings of walls, and those advanced bastions out front, it's an incredibly impressive fortress. Amazing castle, amazing history, and now we've made our way up to the old weapons tower right in the middle of the castle, and from here we've got a view of our final two destinations for today. Back there. First we're heading to an enchanted rock, and then further up, all the way over there into the white. I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out. You can tell from the chamois here, from the steel chamois, we've slowly left the pre-Pyrenees behind and have now reached our first real mountain pass, the Col de Port. According to Calimoto, we're at 1,725 meters above sea level. And you can already see it, the proper Pyrenees, that's where we're heading now. But before we really take on the much higher passes ahead, there's supposedly an absolutely killer motorcycle road coming up next. Gósol, another picturesque little mountain village. I really love these natural stone facades, and yeah, it's actually completely random that we passed through here on our route, but my AI tour guide tipped me off because something that shaped world history happened right here. The artist Picasso, who I think pretty much everyone knows, was going through a bit of a personal crisis back when he was living in Paris, and then he came exactly here to this small village of Gósol together with his lover. Back then it was probably even smaller than it is today. And here, surrounded by the rugged snow-covered peaks of the Pyrenees, the rather angular houses, and according to his own words, the weathered faces of the mountain locals, he found inspiration for a new artistic style that he developed here before returning and celebrating his success. Because in fact, the cubism Picasso is known for, this very distinctive abstract style, was in a way born right here, inspired by these landscapes and by beautiful Gósol. Once again, such an interesting little fact. You really wouldn't expect a tiny village like this to have played such a role. And with that, it's finally time to let the V-Strom stretch its legs a bit. Once again, kudos to AI for apparently even understanding niche interest like motorcycling, because this right here is the B400. A bit of a hidden gem among riders, or so I've been told. It's quite remote. We're north of Berga here in a small valley that connects various passes and other little valleys right in the middle of the Pyrenees. And still you get these long radius corners, good asphalt in pretty solid condition, and above all, really grippy. It's a nice contrast to the rather rough asphalt conditions on some of the passes we've ridden earlier. And here you can already tell you can really let it rip. Alright, the V-Strom might not be a full-on performance machine, but you definitely shouldn't underestimate it. I think it offers more than enough for some proper riding fun. First off, the engine, it pulls nicely from low down. It's not really a motor you need to rev out all the way. I usually ride it more in the mid-range. You brake into the corner and yeah, it's not an engine that needs screaming. It fits perfectly with the character of an adventure bike. That torque, that punch in the mid-range, it just works. Then there's the suspension. It's not highly adjustable or anything, but it works really well. It gives me comfort, and at the same time, when leaning into corners, it still provides more than enough feedback. And the tires, completely new to me so far, the Eurogrip Trailhound. I was a bit skeptical at first, but over the course of today, they've really proven themselves, because you have to say, air temperature-wise, we're above 15 degrees, even up on the passes so far. But the ground is still damp in places, especially in the shaded sections, sometimes still properly cold. The asphalt varies a lot too, so it's not exactly easy conditions for a tire. And this Eurogrip hasn't shown any weakness today. I even like the turn-in behavior of the V-Strom 800. It's responsive, but not overly aggressive or twitchy. Instead, it builds lean angle in a very predictable, gradual way, which gives you a really good feeling and builds confidence. And together with the solid suspension and that typical adventure bike ergonomics, which suit me really well on the V-Strom 800, for me it was just hop on, feel good, and no matter what kind of terrain we've been riding through, I kept thinking, yeah, this fits. Of course, in some tighter corners with a setup that's clearly tuned more for comfort, you do reach the limits of lean angle fairly quickly. But it's not a sport bike. And on a pure corner carving machine, I definitely wouldn't have made it through Barcelona's morning traffic as relaxed as this, or cruised along those highway sections in such comfort. It's always a compromise. And in the case of the V-Strom, I think it's a pretty successful one, but the real test for the bike, for me and for the whole tour, is still ahead. Quick stop by the roadside, because I just can't pass this without stopping. That right there is the Pedraforca, Catalan for stone fork. And this striking mountain massif, we've actually been riding alongside it since Gósol, but it's always either too close or too high to really take it all in properly. There's also a legend about it. On a stormy night, demons and angels are said to have fought here. The devil wanted to use the mountain as a weapon, and in response, God split it apart in his wrath. The more down-to-earth geological explanation, the two peaks, one just under and one just over 2,500 meters, are made of extremely hard limestone. In between, there used to be softer layers of marl and claystone, which were gradually washed away over millions of years. Either way, it's absolutely worth seeing, and it's very close to our final destination. We don't have much time left before the sun disappears behind the peaks. Our journey is slowly coming to an end. It's been a really beautiful trip, a varied trip. I've enjoyed my time on the V-Strom 800, but there haven't really been any big surprises. I mean, we know the Garraf like the back of our hand. We already knew how beautiful Montserrat is, even if we'd never actually been to the monastery before. That I'd like a castle nicknamed the Unconquerable isn't exactly surprising either. Same goes for Spain, offering amazing motorcycle roads, but every adventure also needs a bit of that unknown, that little thrill of not knowing exactly what's coming next. And that's exactly where we are now, at the grand finale, because we're standing at the foot of the Col de Pal, this mountain massif you see behind me. I was already up there last year together with Schaf on the Multistradas. There's a pass over this massif, the Col de la Crueta. In heavy snowfall, with sections of ice and packed snow, we fought our way up there. This year, the weather looks completely different, but the pass I want to take today might look very different as well. The Col de la Crueta from last year, just under 1,900 meters high, actually has a bigger brother, or let's say a bigger half-brother. Because back in the 1970s, towards the end of the Franco era, they started building a pass from here, from Berga, over to the La Molina ski resort, which sits on top of this massif, and then further on toward France. It was quite an ambitious project, meant to be a bit of a technological showcase, winding its way up to 2,106 meters. But then, like so often, things took an unexpected turn. The Cadi Tunnel was built, which was far more weatherproof and economically viable for crossing the mountain. Environmentalists also stepped in because the whole area was designated as a protected natural zone. And on top of that, Catalonia simply ran out of money for this contradictory project, so they just stopped building the road right at the summit. And that's exactly what makes it so exciting, that leap into the unknown, this abandoned, only half-finished mountain pass. Still rideable, still a pretty awesome experience, and the question is, if we make it all the way up, will we actually manage to go even higher than we did last year? That's exactly what we're about to find out. When I heard the description of an unfinished, abandoned mountain pass, I was kind of expecting broken up asphalt, gravel all over the road, and crumbling infrastructure. But the Col de Pal starts off gently, with surprisingly good grip and flowing corners, winding through lush green sheep and cow pastures. The road climbs only very gradually at first. So gradually, in fact, that I start to worry a bit about the grand finale of this trip. No real challenge, no dramatic scenery. Did the AI actually lead me astray with this suggestion in the end? But then all of a sudden the gradient kicks up, the trees begin to thin out, and what follows quite literally takes my breath away.
Tja, und da war die Kohle dann einfach mal alle.
We made it! We're here! It ends very abruptly, this road, because about 50 meters before the end there's a sign saying end in 250 meters. So I was a bit motivated to push on and see what's around the corner. But everything worked out. And how well did it work out? At first, riding up those first meters with that gentle start, I thought, well, this is a bit anticlimactic. This is actually a pretty weak ending. You kind of want to build up some action at the end. And then it turns out to be the softest pass ever. Not at all. Quite the opposite. I think this is one of the coolest passes I've ever ridden. Simply because it's so exposed, so rugged, nothing going on around you. I think I counted maybe 3 cars on the way up. The asphalt is extremely good, the road beautifully laid out with flowing corners. So from a riding perspective alone, absolutely incredible. And yeah, 220 meters higher than the pass I rode with Schaf, and at the same time the weather is just insanely good right now. I'm riding in my summer gloves, just think about that for a second. The display says we've got 6 degrees air temperature up here. It was definitely chilly, but with this panorama and everything going on, I honestly forgot about it. Back there you can already kind of see the original destination of the story. Andorra is slightly hidden behind that mountain. It would be over there on the left. But that peak right behind me already sits close to the French border. The border actually runs along those ridge lines on the mountain to the right. So you could say we at least made it to the edge of it. France and Andorra, I'll have to tick those off next year. And this was a great story, a great tour. It had everything: relaxed moments, culture, history, great riding, and now at the end a bit of an adventure that absolutely delivered both in terms of scenery and riding. Yeah, it wasn't the biggest challenge, not the craziest obstacle, but it doesn't always have to be. It was a really nice tour and a beautiful little adventure to wrap it up. And another surprise, how amazing this pass actually is, but also a surprise how good the Suzuki V-Strom 800 really is. Because the way it performed today, extremely manageable in everyday situations like this morning in Barcelona, tricky traffic, super relaxed clutch, comfortable riding position, forgiving engine. What more do you want? Then we had those highway sections in between. Filming takes a lot of time, so we had to move quickly from A to B every now and then. Wind protection, totally fine. Again, very comfortable thanks to the quality suspension. The riding position, honestly, those transfer sections didn't bother me at all. I had Cardo on my LS2 Challenger helmet and everything was just dialed in. And then the more dynamic riding, where I thought I'd have to compromise the most. No, not really. Even though the suspension is clearly tuned for comfort, it still gives you a solid sense of stability and feedback from the tires. So you can definitely pick up the pace a bit, even on roads that aren't in perfect condition. Another surprise, the Eurogrip Trailhound STR. Like I said earlier, I didn't know this tire before, but it performed really well. Even up here in the cold, basically damp, cold conditions, at first your brain starts ringing alarm bells when you see patches of white on the roadside, but the road surface is good, even with some dirt on it, and even in spots where you could tell it's getting properly frosty, the tire still delivered really solid wet and cold performance. So yeah, that one convinced me as well. And in the end, what more do you want? You can let me know in the comments. What would you have liked to see more of? I'd also be really interested, how did you like this travel video? Usually I'm out with Schaf and it's a different kind of travel when you're filming from bike to bike and riding only motorcycles. This time with the car it had its own challenges but also its advantages. So just drop a comment or at least leave a thumbs up or down so we know whether we should do more stuff like this in the future. And of course today's helpers that made all of this possible, Insta360 across the board, the Ace Pro 2 action cam on the helmet, the Insta360 X5 back there for the external shots. I also recorded a motor vlog with the V-Strom on the pass, so make sure to check that out as well. And take a look at the Insta360 gear if you're interested in capturing your own trips and tours. These days with this kind of equipment and especially with the really well-made Insta360 app where you can wirelessly pull clips onto your phone and edit them, it's perfect for content creators and anyone who wants to become one. You'll find all the links in the video description along with my gear, the Suzuki V-Strom 800 and its specs, which today honestly weren't the main focus, and the Eurogrip Trailhound STR tire. And with that, I think I'll just enjoy the view one more time before heading back on the long and probably rather boring highway ride home. But honestly, this pass alone, the panorama, the ride up here, what an insane combination of landscape and cornering fun. That alone made it worth it. And all the amazing stops along the way just made it 2 or 3 times as rewarding. I hope you feel the same way about this video. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Patrick for sticking through this tour with me. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon. Take care and adios.